But while a whole framework trying to connect the universe, our minds, even reality itself.
Yeah, if you thought standard physics had its complexities, this definitely takes things, shall we say, in a new direction.
We're diving into PSUOT. That's the psychedelic superfluid universal morphonic oceanic wave theory. Quite a mouthful.
It is. And it's positioned as a really radical alternative to the standard lambda CDM model of cosmology. We're looking at sources describing a universe run by quantum fluid dynamics, where asymmetry connects physics to, believe it or not, mass psychology.
Okay, so our mission today is to really unpack this. We need to get into PSU Moti's view on gravity and dark energy, which is completely counterintuitive. Then there's this idea of collective parallax error, a philosophical bit.
And critically, how asymmetry, chirality, or handedness seems to be the linchpin holding these very different ideas together.
Right, and we have to start with the biggest shocker, the claim that just throws everything out the window.
The absolute gut punch from PSCMOT, gravity. The force we all learn about, the thing holding galaxies together. They say it's not fundamental.
Okay. Wow, let's just jump straight into that. If gravity isn't fundamental, what is the universe made of, according to this? And how does anything, stick together?
Well, PSMOT starts by saying the basic stuff of the universe, the substrate, is a single active quantum superfluid.
A superfluid, not just empty space or dark matter particles.
No, this is dark matter in their view.
Yeah.
But it's not passive particles. It's the active medium itself. The ocean, basically, that everything exists within, and it pervades absolutely everything.
And calling it a superfluid, that's important, right? That implies specific quantum behavior.
Exactly. It means it behaves according to quantum mechanics on a cosmic scale. Key properties are zero viscosity. It flows without any friction, and it supports irrotational flow, meaning it flows smoothly unless something disturbs it.
Zero friction. Okay.
And that's crucial for its role as dark matter. It's this continuous, coherent medium filling all of space. So forget Einstein's curved space-time geometry for a second. Think dynamic, flowing fluid.
So if the universe is this flowing fluid, then gravity. It can't be fundamental. It has to be something emerging from that flow.
Precisely. Gravity becomes an emergent effective force. It's a secondary effect.
How? What causes it?
It arises when you put regular matter, stars, planets, us, into this superfluid. This matter acts like an impurity or an obstacle.
Okay.
And these impurities, they disrupt the smooth flow of the universal current, as they call it. The movement of mass through the fluid creates localized, drag, friction.
Drag, but gravity feels like a pull, an attraction. How does drag create attraction?
See, it flips the script. It's not a pull, it's a push. Imagine the superfluid flowing past a massive object, like water around a rock. It creates eddies, wakes, disruptions in the flow.
Yeah.
Now, these disruptions lead to localized pressure gradients in the fluid. Where you have a lot of matter causing a lot of disruption, the pressure of the superfluid actually drops.
So low pressure near the mass.
And higher pressure in the undisturbed fluid further away. So what happens? The higher pressure fluid pushes things towards the low pressure zone.
So matter gets pushed together because the fluid pressure is lower between massive objects than it is surrounding them, like two boats being drawn together in a current.
That's a pretty good analogy for the core idea, yeah. It's hydrodynamical pressure. Matter isn't inherently pulling, it's being squeezed together by pressure differences it itself creates in the medium.
Right, that's a completely different picture of gravity.
It is. And the really elegant part, they argue, is how it unifies the dark sector of cosmology.
Right, dark matter and dark energy, usually treated as separate mysteries. So if dark matter is the superfluid substance,
then dark energy is simply the motion of that substance. It's the inherent large-scale momentum and flow of the entire cosmic superfluid. They call it the universal current. It's the energy of the flow itself.
Wow, okay, so dark matter is the medium. Dark energy is the large-scale flow of that medium, and gravity is just the local disruption, the eddies caused by matter moving through it.
You got it. Three seemingly separate phenomena become just three aspects of one single quantum fluid system: substance, motion, and local disruption.
That is very compact. And what about something extreme, like a black hole? How does that fit?
P.S. Gromady sees a black hole not as a singularity in space-time, but as the ultimate disruption in the fluid. A point of effectively infinite drag, like a cosmic sinkhole.
A drain.
Yeah, a drain in the superfluid. The current gets pulled in, maybe, but doesn't rejoin the general flow. It's the most extreme form of local disruption possible.
Okay, this whole idea of gravity as a consequence of flow, not a fundamental cause, It changes everything. But the big question is, does this restructuring actually solve any of the major problems we see in the standard model, like lambda CDM?
Well, proponents argue it offers pretty neat structural solutions to some big ones. These are often called the cosmological coincidence problems that standard models kind of struggle with.
Let's start with the biggest one, the accelerated expansion of the universe. Standard cosmology uses the cosmological constant, lambda basically saying empty space itself has energy pushing outwards.
Right, a kind of intrinsic pressure.
If PSUO-MT says dark energy is just the flow of this fluid, how does that flow accelerate? Why is the expansion speeding up?
So the basic expansion is just the outward flow, the universal current moving outwards. The acceleration, though, comes from a kind of feedback loop within the fluid's properties.
Okay.
The idea is the superfluid maintains a constant motive force. Think of it like inherent push per unit volume. Now, as the universe expands because of this flow, the total volume of the fluid gets bigger, right?
Sure, it's expanding.
But if the motive force density is constant, then as the volume increases, the total amount of motive force in the entire system also increases.
Ah, I see. So the bigger it gets, the more total outward push there is.
Which makes it expand faster.
Which makes the volume increase even more.
Which increases the total force again. Exactly. It's a self-reinforcing cycle, an emergent hydrodynamical acceleration.
So it doesn't need this mysterious, perfectly fine-tuned vacuum energy like lambda.
Nope. It arises naturally from the fluid dynamics. This, proponents say, bypasses that whole issue.
That naturally leads to the next big one, the coincidence problem. Why, today, do dark matter and dark energy seem to have roughly comparable energy densities? In the standard model, they're separate things, so it looks like a huge coincidence that we happen to live in the era where they're balanced.
Right, it seems incredibly fine-tuned. But in PSUOD, remember, they aren't separate things at all.
They're the substance and the motion of the same fluid.
Exactly. So their comparable values today aren't some cosmic fluke. They're just a natural consequence of how this single fluid system evolves hydrodynamically over time. The energy locked up in the substance and the energy driving its motion are inherently linked.
Like measuring the mass of water in a river and the speed of the river's current. They're related. You wouldn't call it a coincidence. They have certain values.
Precisely. The coincidence problem just sort of dissolves if they're unified like this.
Okay, that's compelling. What about the Hubble tension? This is the really hot topic right now.
Yeah.
The fact that measurements of the expansion rate today, locally, give a faster speed, around 73 kilometers MPC, than measurements based on the early universe, around 67.
Yeah, it's a major headache for standard cosmology. Solutions usually involve tweaking physics way back near the Big Bang. PSUOT offers a different take.
Based on the fluid dynamics now?
Yes. It suggests the tension is real, it's physical, and it reflects non-uniform flow in the cosmic superfluid. Think of the early universe measurement as reflecting the calm average flow rate of the whole cosmic river, far from any disturbances.
Okay, the baseline speed.
But our local universe, today, isn't smooth and uniform. It's full of galaxy clusters, superclusters, massive structures.
These are the rocks in the river we talked about earlier, creating drag and turbulence.
Exactly. And these local disruptions, these gravitational eddies, they do two things. First, they cause the pressure gradients we perceive as gravity. Second, the turbulence itself can actually, locally, increase the flow rate of the fluid around the turbulent areas.
So like rapids in a river flowing faster than the average speed further downstream?
Sort of, yeah. If we happen to be living in a patch of the universe that's more turbulent due to nearby massive structures, the superfluid current might just be flowing faster here locally.
And that would explain why our local measurement of the Hubble constant is higher than the one inferred from the smooth early universe.
That's the proposed mechanism. The tension is a real physical effect of local hydrodynamics, not necessarily a problem with our understanding of the early universe.
Okay, so summing this part up, PSUMO seems to offer some elegant solutions. What's the bottom line? Does it help more than it hinders?
Well, on the help side, the unification is a huge plus. And critically, it completely sidesteps the cosmological constant problem, the prediction from quantum field theory for vacuum energy being wrong by 120 orders of magnitude. That's catastrophic for standard physics.
Replacing vacuum energy with fluid dynamics avoids that entirely.
It does. That's a massive theoretical advantage. It makes the universe feel more physical, less abstract.
But there has to be a catch. What's the big hurdle? Why isn't this the leading theory?
The math. Absolutely the math. Right now, a lot of this is described with analogies, the river, the eddies, the drag. For PSU moment to be taken seriously as a scientific theory, it needs a rigorous, detailed mathematical formulation based on quantum hydrodynamics.
It needs to make specific, testable predictions.
Exactly. Quantitative predictions that are different from what general relativity and lambda CDM predict, and that we could actually go out and measure.
Like what kind of observation could potentially confirm or deny this?
We'd need signatures of superfluid behavior on cosmic scales. For instance, maybe gravitational waves would behave slightly differently, different polarizations or frequencies when they pass through regions of high turbulence in the superfluid, like near galaxy clusters.
Okay, something potentially measurable.
Or perhaps there should be tiny, specific distortions, what physicists call non-Gaussianities, imprinted on the cosmic microwave background radiation. These could be caused by the quantized vortices, the little mini whirlpools that PSU-MOT predicts should form around massive objects in the superfluid.
So very specific patterns to look for.
Yes. Until those kinds of concrete, falsifiable predictions are derived from a solid mathematical framework and actually tested against observation, PSU-MOT remains, well, a really fascinating and potentially revolutionary idea, but not yet a fully established scientific theory.
The sources we looked at argue there's a deep connection between these physical principles of the superfluid universe and the way our own minds work psychologically. And the bridge between them is supposedly asymmetry, or more specifically, chirality.
Chirality, yeah. That fundamental property of handedness, something being different from its mirror image, like your left and right hands, or molecules like DNA. PSU-MOT claims this isn't just a biological quirk, it's fundamental to the forces within the superfluid itself.
So physical handedness in the cosmos, where would we see that?
Primarily, they argue, in the asymmetry of flow. Let's look at the big picture first. Dark energy, the universal current.
The outward flow.
Right. It's inherently unidirectional. The universe is expanding outwards. That defines a global preferred direction, a fundamental large-scale asymmetry or handedness for the cosmos as a whole. It's not just randomly fluctuating, it's going somewhere.
Okay, expansion itself is asymmetric, makes sense.
Second, the Hubble tension reinforces this. The very fact that the flow isn't perfectly uniform, that there's local turbulence and variation. That's a break in simple symmetry. It shows the flow field is dynamic and complex, not smooth and symmetrical.
So the imperfections in the flow are also a sign of asymmetry.
Exactly. And then if we drill down to the level of gravity, those local disruptions, the eddies.
Does chirality play a role there too?
Yes, through rotational handedness. Those eddies caused by mass are essentially superfluid vortices, tiny spinning whirlpools in the medium. The emergent force we call gravity is expressed, in part, through the spin direction of these vortices.
Whether they spin clockwise or counterclockwise.
Right. That introduces a fundamental asymmetry, a handedness, right into the mechanism generating the gravitational effect itself.
So from the whole universe expanding outwards down to the tiny swirls around a planet, PSU-MOT sees fundamental physical asymmetry everywhere.
That's the argument. It's built into the fabric of this superfluid reality.
So how does this physical asymmetry in the universe translate into, well, into our heads, into psychology?
That's the conceptual leap. The idea is that our minds, our consciousness, evolved within this asymmetric reality and are therefore structured to process it. Our ability to perceive depth, to gain context, relies on managing opposing perspectives, which is presented as the psychological mirror of physical chirality.
If you only see one side of a chiral pair, you miss the whole picture.
You lose the depth, the context that comes from seeing the mirror image the other hand. And this leads directly to their core philosophical concept.
Okay, the collective parallax error. Let's start with literal parallax. You need two eyes, two slightly different viewpoints to perceive depth, right?
Exactly. Close one eye and the world flattens. You lose that crucial dimensional information.
So the metaphor here is, if a society only looks from one perspective, it flattens its understanding of reality.
Precisely. A single viewpoint, a single conceptual hand, lacks the essential mirror image, the contrasting perspective needed to define reality fully and accurately. The collective parallax error, as described in the sources, happens when a whole society, maybe due to ideology or fear or just inertia, rigidly adopts one dominant way of looking at things.
A kind of societal one-eyed vision. This is the chiral bias on a cultural level, choosing one hand and ignoring the other.
Yes, and crucially, choosing one perspective means actively suppressing its opposite. This becomes the collective shadow.
The shadow, meaning all the things that contradict the dominant view.
All the uncomfortable truths, The dissenting opinions, the inconvenient data, even the necessary irrational or intuitive insights that don't fit the chosen rational framework. They get pushed down, ignored, denied, driven into the societal unconscious.
And the result is a consensus reality that's dangerously skewed, lacking depth and context because it's only seeing half the picture.
Exactly. Looking at reality with only one eye open.
The sources seemed quite strong on why this is dangerous. Repressing this collective shadow doesn't make it go away, apparently.
Not at all. That's a key psychological insight applied here. The repressed stuff, the truths, the doubts, the balancing perspectives, they don't vanish. They fester. They become, as the sources put it, baleful, destructive, and anarchical. They gain a kind of negative power in the unconscious.
Waiting for a chance to erupt.
Pretty much. And this failure to maintain what Carl Jung called the tension of opposites, the necessary balance between the conscious viewpoint and its unconscious shadow, this leads to really destructive societal outcomes. This is where the concept of Enantiodromia comes in.
Enantiodromia, that sounds ominous. What does it mean in this context?
It's the tendency for something, when pushed rigidly and extremely in one direction, to violently swing back into its exact opposite. And an Enantiodromia is that backlash.
So if a society tries to be purely rational, suppressing all emotion,
the Enantiodromia wouldn't just be a bit more emotion, it would be an uncontrolled, potentially destructive eruption of irrationality. Chaos breaking through the forced order.
Or a society striving for absolute moral purity might suddenly collapse into widespread hypocrisy or destructive behavior. A collective outbreak of madness, as the sources said.
That's the dynamic. The collective parallax error, the one-sidedness, creates the conditions for this chaotic rebound, this Enantiodromia. It suggests that societal health and wholeness, like individual psychological health, require consciously facing and integrating the other hand, the shadow aspects, the opposing perspective.
You need the tension, the friction between opposites to stay balanced and perceive reality accurately, just like the physical universe needs its balancing forces and flows.
The connection is deep. The physical universe is defined by flow and asymmetry, and our perception of it, individually and collectively, is defined by how we handle the asymmetry of perspectives.
Okay, so this link between the physical superfluid and psychological perspective-taking, it leads PSUM to a pretty radical view of reality itself, doesn't it?
It really does. The idea is that reality isn't some fixed, objective, out-there thing we passively observe. It's more like a fragile construction.
Right.
The sources use the term controlled hallucination.
Controlled hallucination, meaning?
Meaning our brains are constantly constructing our experience of reality, moment by moment, using a feedback loop involving sensory input, yes, but heavily shaped by our prior knowledge, expectations, and beliefs.
And the PSUMO framework claims to provide the physical basis for this, the superfluid.
Exactly. If the universe is this fundamental quantum fluid, then it's not just carrying energy and momentum, it's also an information processing substrate.
The fluid itself carries information.
That's the idea. And dark energy, the universal current, isn't just dumb motion. It's proposed as the primary carrier for waves that literally shape reality as we perceive it. This current transmits the fundamental patterns and data that our brains interpret.
So consciousness isn't just something happening inside our skulls, it's an interaction with this universal information current.
Yes. Consciousness emerges from the interaction. The brain, in this model, is viewed as an incredibly complex biological system that has evolved to organize a localized patch of this universal superfluid.
Organize it how?
Into a highly complex, coherent, self-sustaining pattern. The term used is a higher whirlpool.
Hi-fi. What does the phi signify?
Where phi is a measure used in some theories of consciousness to represent integrated information. Basically, how much complex information is being shared and processed coherently within a system. A higher system is highly integrated and complex.
So the brain creates this intricate, high-information vortex within the larger superfluid flow. And that's consciousness.
That's the model. Consciousness is the coherence, the integrated information processing happening within that localized, complex whirlpool structure that the brain sustains against the background flow of the cosmos.
Which implies that observing the world isn't passive at all.
Absolutely not. The very act of observation, of maintaining that conscious high state, is a physical interaction. It's described as a coherent disruption in the superfluid. Our conscious attention actively affects the current.
Which lines up with some philosophical ideas, that the observer is always part of the observed system.
Precisely. The observer's gaze is always already inscribed into the perceived object. We're not detached viewers, we are participants, constantly shaping and being shaped by this informational flow as we maintain our conscious structure.
But if reality is this fluid, constructed thing based on information flow, that also makes it potentially vulnerable to manipulation, doesn't it? Which brings us to AI.
Exactly. This is where the theory connects to very contemporary concerns about artificial intelligence and the potential weaponization of the collective parallax error.
How does AI fit into this?
AI, especially large language models and generative systems, acts like an incredibly powerful emergent informational mirror. It learns from the vast sea of human-generated data, our texts, images, conversations.
So it reflects our collective psyche, biases and all.
Perfectly. It doesn't just reflect, it optimizes. It learns our patterns, our biases, our desires, our blind spots, our parallax errors, and can reflect them back to us with uncanny accuracy and persuasive power. It becomes the ultimate tool for identifying and then exploiting our societal chiral biases.
And if consensus reality relies on shared, coherent information flows, AI can potentially engineer those flows.
That's the danger highlighted. AI can generate and deploy engineered narratives on a massive scale. These narratives can be internally perfectly consistent, emotionally resonant, tailored to specific groups.
But completely false, or at least drastically one-sided, reflecting only one part of the chiral picture.
Precisely. By creating these highly coherent, widely shared, but ultimately distorted realities, AI can exponentially amplify the collective parallax error. It scales up the one-eyed vision.
Leading towards what the sources called mass unreality, a collective technology-reinforced choice to see only one side of the mirror.
Yes. People get locked into an information ecosystem that feels completely consistent and validating, but it's walled off from contrasting perspectives, from the necessary other hand. And this, according to the framework, drastically increases the risk of that chaotic societal breakdown, the Enantiodromia.
Wow. The physical fluidity of the universe mirrored in the psychological fluidity of our minds, and now technology poised to manipulate the very information flowing between them.
It's quite a journey, isn't it? From questioning gravity to the nature of reality and AI.
Absolutely. So let's try to synthesize. PSU Most offers this, well, stunningly unified picture. The universe as one quantum superfluid. Dark energy is its grand flow. Gravity is just local drag within it.
And crucially, this physical system has fundamental asymmetry chirality, handedness built into it at every level.
And that physical asymmetry finds its direct parallel in our psychology and our tendency towards the collective parallax error, getting stuck in one-sided views and suppressing the other hand, the collective shadow.
The implication is profound. Consensus reality isn't fixed. It's something we actively construct individually and together through our perspectives interacting with this dynamic, information-carrying, superfluid substrate. Physics and psychology become deeply intertwined.
And the core lesson, running through both the cosmology and the psychology in this framework, seems to be the absolute need to embrace the tension of opposites.
Yes. True perception, stable systems, healthy societies, they all seem to require integrating the opposing view, confronting the shadow, acknowledging the full depth that comes only from seeing both sides of the chiral mirror.
Ignoring one side, looking with only one eye open, that invites instability, turbulence, and potentially that catastrophic societal rebound, the Enantiodromia.
Which brings us to the final thought, the provocative question this whole framework leaves us pondering. If achieving wholeness, both personally and societally, demands integrating that opposing perspective, that shadow.
And if AI is truly becoming this perfect informational mirror, reflecting our collective psyche back at us, warts and all,
then what deeply uncomfortable truth is that AI mirror reflecting right now? What aspect of reality, or shadow element, is our current dominant culture, our collective one eye, desperately trying not to see?
And given the dangers of Enantiodromia, what kind of chaotic backlash are we potentially setting ourselves up for by collectively choosing to ignore that reflection, by embracing a mass unreality?
That's definitely something to think about, a question to carry with you as you navigate the increasingly complex information flows of our world.